Hello my dear students, welcome to your social studies class. Before we start our new chapter, Parallels and Meridians, let's revise what you have learnt in your first chapter, Know Your Planet. In the chapter Know Your Planet, definitely you would have learnt about the shape of the earth. It's sphere in shape, it's spherical in shape, right? Then you learn the models of the earth. The earth can be represented in the form of a globe and of a map. The other way, when you said about the globe, have you observed certain lines drawn on the globe? Have you ever thought of what these lines are? These lines are called as the imaginary lines. They are named as parallels and meridians. These parallels and meridians have certain value. With the value of these parallels and meridians, we can locate the places. So we are going to learn about these imaginary lines. Okay, before we move on to the imaginary line, let's see which is an imaginary line that passes through the center of the earth. Yes, the imaginary line that passes through the center of the earth is called as the axis. Axis is the imaginary line that passes through the center of the earth. On this imaginary line, the earth spins. These all are imaginary lines. They are not real lines. They are imaginary lines in order to know the location of places. So, axis is an imaginary line that passes through the center of the earth. And on this axis, the earth spins. It has two ends. Okay, the axis have two ends. The end point on the top is called as the North Pole. The end point on the top is called as the North Pole. And the end point at the bottom is called as the South Pole. I repeat once more, an imaginary line that runs through the center of the earth is called as an axis, and on this axis our earth spins. The axis have two endpoints. On the top we have the North Pole and at the bottom we have the South Pole. You can see poles written here. On the top we have the North Pole and at the bottom we have the South Pole. Now let's move on to the important imaginary line on the Earth's surface. They are called as parallels or lines of latitudes. Now we have to know what is a parallel. Parallel means those are the imaginary lines that run on the Earth's surface from east to west. You can see the first picture. Those are the circles, those are the lines that run from east to west. All the parallels are complete circles. They are the set of circles, okay? And this circle will run from east to west. And those imaginary lines are called as the parallels or lines of latitudes. I repeat once more, parallels are the set of circles. They run from east to west. And they are called as the parallels or lines of latitudes. Now next one, look the second picture. You can see a middle line drawn on that picture. And it is named as equator. And this equator is the longest parallel on the Earth's surface. And it passes to the middle of the Earth's surface. You can see the set of circles drawn here. And comparatively, you can see the middle equator there, right? And with the equator, compare the other circles. It is the longest. Just take, for example, take a ball, take a twine, take a thread or something. You just circle it around the ball. What you can observe? You can observe the first set what we have circled will be longer, right? So, equator is the longest parallel. It passes through the middle of the Earth's surface and is called as the longest parallel. Okay, now let's move on to the next point of the parallel. Next point is that when we have the equator in the middle, we divide the Earth's surface into two parts. Okay, when the equator passes through the middle, we divide the Earth's surface into two parts. Okay, the upper part, the topmost part or the northern part is called as the northern hemisphere and the bottom part is called as the southern hemisphere. I'll repeat once more. Parallels are the set of circles. They run from east to west. We have a middle parallel called as the equator, and equator is called as the longest parallel. Then the next point we learn that equator divides the earth into two halves. The top part is called as the northern hemisphere and the bottom part is called as the southern hemisphere. Now let's move on to the next point. What are the important features of parallels? As I said earlier, North Pole and South Pole, what are they? They are the endpoints of the axis. North Pole is on the top and the South Pole is at the bottom. All the parallels on the Earth's surface are complete circles, except the North Pole and the South Pole. They are just points. Okay, you would have seen in your previous picture on the poles, all other parallels are complete circles, but North Pole and South Pole are just points. That is the important feature of the parallel. The first important feature, all other parallels are circles, but our North Pole and the South Pole are just points. Now let's look on to the next point. You can see the difference of the length in the parallel. As they move from the equator, what is happening to the circles? What is happening to the parallels? Their length is decreasing. As they move away from the equator, the length of the parallel decreases. That is our second feature. The length of the parallel decreases as they move away from the equator. Now let's move on to the next feature. You can see the space between the parallel. They all are equidistant, right? They all have the same distance. They have a distance of 1 degree. Okay, they have an interval of 1 degree. They all are placed in a equidistant manner. Okay, so all the parallels are equidistant. They all are in an equal distance. That is the third feature. Now let's move on to the fourth feature of the parallels. In the fourth feature, you can see that neither of the parallels have crossed any other line or neither of the parallels have touched any other line or overlapped any line. All the lines are standing independently. That is the last feature you have. All the parallels, neither they touch another parallel or they cross another parallel. Now let's move on to the next point. Let's see once more. First point was all the parallels are complete circles except the North Pole and the South Pole. Those two poles are just points. Okay. Now next one, as the parallel move away from the equator, the length of the parallel decreases. The third point was that all the parallels are placed equidistant or they have equal distance of 1 degree. The last feature is neither of the parallels cross each other or touch each other. They are standing independently. Okay. Now let's move on to the next topic. How are parallels numbered? Okay. How are the parallels numbered? You can see, as I said earlier, all the parallels, all the imaginary lines have certain value. If you know the value of these imaginary lines, we can easily locate a place on a globe or on a earth's surface. Okay, so we are going to give certain value for each parallel, certain numbers for each parallel. So we start on with the equator, because equator is the longest parallel, right? So we will start with the equator, and we have given 0 degree latitude for them. So when we start numbering the parallels, we start with the equator with 0 degree. And we said about the North Pole and the South Pole, right? So we'll give a value for the North Pole as 90 degree north and South Pole as 90 degrees south. Okay, the north and south has to be specifically written to know the place, to know the location where it is. Is it in the northern side or is it in the southern side? If it is the northern side, we represent with N. If it is in the southern side, we represent with S. Okay, so North Pole has 90 degree north and South Pole also has 90 degree south. And our equator has 0 degree. Okay, we start the numbering from the equator. The next point is that all the parallels are equidistant with 1 degree. All are being placed separately. So we are going to number the parallels here. There are 90 parallels in the northern hemisphere and 90 parallels in the southern hemisphere. We said that 0 is the equator and 90 is the degree for the North Pole. Means that there are 90 parallels in the northern hemisphere and there are 90 parallels in the southern hemisphere. Right. So I said a number of 90 there, right? 90 in the northern hemisphere and 90 in the southern hemisphere. So it make a total of 180, right? Plus we are going to add one more, which is that one, that is the equator. Okay, equator is also a parallel, so we are adding on one more. So we got 181 parallels. 90 parallels in the northern hemisphere and 90 parallels in the southern hemisphere plus 1 the equator. So we got the total of 181 parallels. Okay, so I'll repeat how are the parallels numbered. It starts with the equator with the 0 degree latitude, and we have given a value of 90 degree north to the North Pole and 90 degrees south to the south. It means that northern hemisphere has 90 parallels and southern hemisphere has another 90 parallels. Okay, plus 1 you are going to add, that is the equator. So with the equator, the total of 181 parallels are there. Hope it's clear this point. Now next topic we are going to learn is the important parallels on the Earth's surface. We said about 181 parallels. We cannot memorize all 181 parallels together. So we learn certain important parallels on the Earth's surface. The first and most important parallel on the Earth's surface is equator. Then we learnt about another 2 points, that is North Pole and South Pole. What was the degree of North Pole? What was the degree of North Pole? 90 degree north, and South Pole was 90 degree south. Okay, so these are the values what we have learned till now. Now you are going to learn certain important parallels. There are 90 parallels in the northern hemisphere. We are not going to learn all the parallels there. We are just going to learn about the important parallels. So we will see what is happening in the northern hemisphere, which all parallels are there in the northern hemisphere. We have Tropic of Cancer and Arctic Circle in the northern hemisphere. 2 important parallels in the northern hemisphere are Tropic of Cancer and Arctic Circle. We have given a value for it, 23.5 degree north and 66.5 degree north. Let's move on the same to the southern hemisphere. If we have Tropic of Cancer here, we have Tropic of Capricorn here with 23.5 degree, the same value, but the side is different, it's south. Okay, the next parallel we have Antarctic Circle here with 66.5 degree south. Okay, so these are the important parallels. There are other parallels also, but these are the main parallels. You have to learn it clearly. This diagram is very important. You have to draw itself and learn it with the name of the parallel and its value. So the equator with the 0 degree. In the northern hemisphere, we have Tropic of Cancer and Arctic Circle. In the southern hemisphere, we have Tropic of Capricorn and Antarctic Circle. It has a value of 23.5 degree north in Tropic of Cancer and 66.5 degree of north in the Arctic Circle. We have Tropic of Capricorn in the southern hemisphere and Antarctic Circle in the northern hemisphere. So these are the important parallels of the Earth's surface. Okay, with these parallel you can easily locate a place. Another important thing you have to learn is this Arctic Circle and Antarctic Circle are called as the polar circles. Okay, they are complete circle. They are called as polar circles. Okay, so these are the important parallels you have to learn in this chapter. So we will revise it once more. The imaginary line that passes through the center is called as the axis. Axis have two endpoints, North Pole and South Pole. Then we learned what are parallels. Parallels are the set of circles drawn on Earth's surface running from east to west. We have a middle parallel called as the equator, and it is called as the longest parallel, and it also divides Earth into two halves. The top part is called as the northern hemisphere and the bottom part is called as the southern hemisphere. Then we learnt about the features of parallels. North Pole and South Pole are just points. The length of the parallel decreases when they move away from the equator. Then they all are placed equidistant of 1 degree. Neither of the parallels touch or cross each other. They stand independently. Then we learnt about how the parallels are numbered. We start numbering the parallels with equator with a value of 0. Then we move on to the 90 parallels in the northern hemisphere and 90 parallels in the southern hemisphere are there, plus 1 equator. So we have got the total of 181 parallels. Then we learnt about the important parallels, which all parallels are there in the northern hemisphere and which are there in the southern hemisphere with its value. Thank you, my dear children. We are winding up our video.